Slept On Cinema is sponsored by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know someone who's struggling with shoe tying for any reason, Training Ties is the perfect solution.
If Jeepers Creepers is what a smart horror film is supposed to be like, can we please start getting the dumb ones again?
The only thing about this movie that really made me shudder is that we are probably going to be deluged with a bunch of crappy sequels for it.
I've seen episodes of The X-Files scarier than this.
Plays like an amateur debut effort written over a weekend during which its writer wasn't entirely sober.
One of those horror movies in which its characters do such unbelievably stupid things all the time that you literally want to shout at them.
Takes an enduring monster movie premise, starts to rework it promisingly, and then drops the ball and falls back on trite, stereotype action until we finally stop caring.
All right. Welcome to Slept On Cinema. Stan Steamer here.
I'm Grove Street.
And we are diving into Jeepers Creepers this week. I had a great time watching this film. Let's get right to it.
We'll start with rotten premise. After making a horrific discovery in the basement of an old abandoned church, Trish and her brother Darry watch their routine road trip home from college turn into a heart-stopping race for their lives. They find themselves the chosen prey of an indestructible force that relentlessly pursues them and gives a new and chilling meaning to the old song, Jeepers Creepers. What a premise!
The fact that this still meets our sub 50 in each category criteria is shocking. And I know this just barely meets both of them.
This was shocking that it was on our list. I could not, when this came up, I could not believe it was sub 50 on both. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. And to get into some of the background here, it came out in 2001, Labor Day weekend, which I think is a tough weekend for movies, but it wasn't just the number one movie. It was the highest grossing Labor Day weekend opening movie ever, which is kind of shocking. Fun fact, it was later beaten by Jeepers Creepers 2 in 2003, which also came out Labor Day weekend. So they clearly had figured out their spot and just stuck to it.
I'll take that reviewer who said something about a bunch of crappy sequels.
So 2001, it knocked off American Pie 2, which I guess in 2001 was probably no easy feat. It had been 3 weeks running as the number one movie. And it seemed like a big year for sequels, too. 3 of the prior 4 top movies at that point were all sequels. So this was sort of the first movie to jump to the top of the list that wasn't something people had already seen before. You had American Pie 2, Rush Hour 2, Jurassic Park 3. The other 4th was Planet of the Apes, which is a reboot. So that's also not any kind of new ideas. So this was something new then. Looking back at the year 2001 for horror movies, it was sort of the end of this teen high school type genre of horror movies. And I know you did Last Summer 97, Urban Legend 98, The Faculty 98.
Horror movies that take place in high school.
Yeah, a lot of those. And I think 2001 was like kind of the end of that. Like Scary Movie came out in 2000. And I think at that point, you're like, all right, this has been a little much. And this is sort of, I feel like it's a turning point for horror movies because it shifts away from that style of just a bunch of attractive teenagers trying to avoid getting slashed up by somebody. I think probably the most interesting thing about this movie is some of the genesis of it. I don't know if you were a Unsolved Mysteries fan growing up, but I watched quite a lot of Unsolved Mysteries. This movie was more or less based off of an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, which is wild. I'm sure we'll get into this later, but the opening scene of this movie is one of the best parts of the film. And it is almost a shot-for-shot remake of an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. I went back and watched the Unsolved Mysteries after watching this, and it was uncanny. It was a total ripoff of this episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Someone clearly watched Unsolved Mysteries and just turned it into a movie, or at least a kernel of an idea for a movie, which is, I think, just goes to show that you can find inspiration in almost anything. Also, first leading role for Justin Long. I think at that point he was an unknown character, an unknown actor. Later went on to star in some other great horror films, and obviously he was the Mac guy for a while. Now a pretty famous guy at the time, an unknown, which I usually like in these type of horror movies to have some unknown actors because you don't know who's going to die, right? Like usually when it's someone famous, it's like, all right, well, they're going to make it.
I had read about that in the auditions, he was the only one that like was really believable that he was terrified. Some other people didn't give off, like they maybe gave off a vibe that don't worry, I got this or something like that. But he was just completely terrified in the auditions, and it carried over to the screen. He did an amazing job. But like you said, like that was a part of what made this kind of crazy that it did so well is there was no name talent in this movie. It was a low budget horror movie that crushed on Labor Day, a holiday that typically was not for movies. And this low budget horror movie came out of nowhere with nobody in it and kind of took over the day and set a whole new precedent for Labor Day movies.
Looking at it now, you probably don't think about how different it was from what else was out there at the time. That pretty much leads us right into Bolo.
Bolo, Be on the Lookout. You want to go first?
On the Lookout. Sure. I will dive in here. And this one's going to come right off the bat. But...
Oh, no, I hope you're not stealing mine, but go ahead.
2 ambiguous license plates.
Oh, okay. Yep. Very good. I'll go even before that. The eye of the MGM lion in the intro gives you a little hint as to what's to come.
Ooh, good one. Good one. I'm going to go with 1 body ceiling. I've never seen a body ceiling before. You see one here, and it's fantastic.
That's true. It's the best body ceiling I've ever seen. That's true. I'll go with 1 oddly timed crotch shot.
I will go with mag lights. This is, I think, the heyday of mag lights. I used to have mag lights back in the early 2000s. They were awesome, and there's a bunch in this movie, and they look great.
That's a good one. I'll add tongue biting.
I will say be on the lookout for 1 well-placed roadside advertisement.
Okay, that's good.
You'll know it when you see it.
And my last one is be on the lookout for pink underwear.
I got one more here, and I was so excited when I saw this. But be on the lookout, Bolo, for several Bolo signs.
Oh, okay. That's incredible. A little meta there. That's great.
Bolo makes an appearance in the movie. First time, I think, on the pod that happens.
That is the first time, at least unless we missed it before.
All right. So drink to pair with the film.
I'll go first here. So I think this movie would go very well, especially we're recording this actually on Halloween. So I would go with a pumpkin martini. I think that would be a fitting drink to have with this movie.
Nice. Have you had a pumpkin martini? I've never had one.
Oh, yeah. I don't like pumpkins, but pumpkin martini I enjoy.
I'm going to have to try one of those. I am going to go with a Bloody Mary.
Oh.
I think you'll see there's quite a lot of consuming people in this film. And I think a Bloody Mary, I mean, you drink blood. There it is.
That's a perfect choice. All right, we'll take our break to watch the movie and we'll be back with a draft.
I haven't seen a car in 50 miles.
You know what I just thought of, right?
Kenny and Darla.
You believe that story?
That they did go looking for her head.
They only found the car.
They never found her head.
What's he doing?
The hell is that? He dumped something down that pipe.
Wrapped in a sheet.
I'm just gonna look.
Hello? You know the part in scary movies where somebody does something really stupid and everybody hates them for it? This is it.
Every 23rd spring, for 23 days, it gets to eat. You've got something it likes, one of you.
Jeepers Creepers.
Welcome back. That was fantastic.
So much fun. Great movie. A lot of fun watching it, start to finish.
We took a while for us to record this, and I think I ended up watching it 4 times. And a good sign of a movie, my wife watched it with me 3 times. She enjoyed it as well. So it's movies for everyone.
Yeah. High level of rewatchability.
So we'll start with the draft. We'll let you have first pick.
I talked about this already in the intro in our first segment a bit. I'm going to take the opening scene. Like this is like a top 5 all-time opening scene movie. It puts you right in the mindset of the characters that you could easily say, oh, I'm just driving down the street here, chatting to your sibling on some open road. And then this truck just comes on you and suddenly they're terrified.
Yep.
And it's this terror that you can really imagine. This could happen to anybody, and they just get right into it. It sets the tone of the movie so well. It's just great. I loved that opening scene. I probably watched that opening scene 5 or 6 times, just that scene, because it was just awesome.
Yep. It's impossible to not see that opening scene flipping around and not just be locked into the movie after that. It really does just grab you. I'm going to go with pipe exploring. I thought that was a pretty poor decision to be dangling down that pipe at the house of the guy that just scared the heck out of you on the road, to go to his house and explore the evil pipe or whatever that leads to somewhere. He doesn't know where at the time, but to be dangling down that thing in some sort of effort to save the bloody bodies that went down there seems to be a pretty bad choice or decision. It turns out it was.
I liked that scene because that was the part where Trish says, you know, that part in Scary
right.
where you're yelling at people. It was very self-referential and having a good time with itself, because I'm sure you're doing the same thing that I was doing. I was watching this, just like, what the hell are you thinking? Like, really, you're going to go down this rusty, nasty pipe that, I don't know, best case scenario is full of dead bodies?
Best case scenario, I think that's what it is.
That seems insane to me, but
I'm going to go insect noises. So there wasn't a lot of soundtrack to this movie. It was mainly just whatever was on the car radio, whatever radio was around. I mean, it's not piped in at all. Quite the opposite. The insect noises were so loud that oftentimes they would have to like shoot. I think it was the director would have to pop off a shot of a gun to quiet the insects for a few seconds so they could squeeze some dialogue in. But most of the movie just has eerie crickets and insect noises in the background, and it's perfectly placed.
Yeah, I wonder if they took that into account when scouting it, because that's just such perfect background sound for a movie like this.
It really is.
I'm going to go for my second pick, cars. Generally, I thought all the cars in this film were awesome. I thought the scary truck that rams them in the beginning, I guess was a 1941 truck, was so perfect. It was so terrifying and scary and set a time. I thought their Chevy Impala that they were driving was a sick car. It sort of never made sense why they had it, but it was just so cool. The scenes they have in the car, that scene where they are driving and the car's driving behind them and they're having these dialogue in both cars, and then you go from one car and it pans back to the other car, then pans back up to the front car. I don't think I'd ever seen a scene where they did that and just bounced back and forth so seamlessly. I thought the cars were awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna take vanity plates, but I'm not sure. I think that goes along with your cars.
I got my wraparound pick here.
Oh, I'm all out of order. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, it's been a little while since
we
got to dust the dust off ourselves. I'm kind of surprised this lasted this long. I'm taking the Jeepers Creepers song.
Ugh, great pick, of course. Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's the perfect song for this movie. If I hadn't known that the opening scene and sort of was the inspiration from Unsolved Mysteries, I would have thought that someone heard this song and was like, I need to make a movie based around this song, because it's creepy, it's eerie. Where'd you get those peepers? It's amazing. It's just it weaves throughout the whole movie. It's great.
Yeah, and there was even a decoy of it that came on in the cop car where he thought he heard the Jeepers Creepers song, but it was actually just Jeepers Creepers being said in another song.
Yeah, that misdirection was fantastic.
Phenomenal. Yep. That's I can't believe that lasted to round 3. I'll go with you touched on it a little bit before, but the movie's self-awareness. It played up all of the horror movie tropes between like cars not starting, going to the old church, there's cut phone lines, there's literally a crazy cat lady in it. There's someone who can tell the future and predicts doom. Like, it has all of these things, and the movie is very, like we'd said by the tunnel, this is one of those scenes in a movie that everyone's, rooting against the person for doing that. Like, it was a very self-aware movie, and deliberately, I think, put in all of those tropes just for fun.
Yeah, I love the scene where they're running over the demon.
Yeah, that was, yep.
It's just like, oh, they're never dead or something.
They never are. Exactly. Yeah. I almost picked that running over the demon scene as my draft pick, but
sleep around. You want to kick us off?
I guess I'll go with like a brother-sister movie. I had read that they're coming up with the movie. They didn't want any sort of sexual tension or whatever between the two characters. They didn't want that to be any part of the focus. So making this sort of like a brother-sister love-hate movie where they bicker the whole time, I thought was unique. You don't get a lot of movies like that, constantly them like shitting on each other and making fun of each other and loving each and hating each other until the end, where you realize, oh no, they really do love each other, when she was trying to trade places with him. So I'll go with my sleeper pick being the brother-sister love-hate story.
Yeah, I like that relationship as well too. It was more interesting and less just standard boyfriend girlfriend typical horror movie. I'm going to go with, and this is probably an obscure one, but when they're at the diner and they're, flipping out, they just talk to Giselle on the phone. No one's really believing them. But then one of the waitresses sees the demon or a person hunched over going out to the car, and everyone goes out and they're all talking about it. And the waitress is describing what happened. And she's talking about how the demon or the person was sniffing all of the clothes. And she says, looked like he was liking it too. And it was just that line. I'm going with that line because I just cracked up when she said that. I was just like, it was such a great little insight into this demon, because he was definitely really enjoying it too. And it was just the way she said it, was looked like he was liking it too.
Yeah, she said it so well and perfectly. That's a great choice. All right, we're done with the draft and moving on to one change to be a blockbuster. And I'll go first because mine's sort of a lack of one. But some of this has happened a few times on this podcast where one change to be a blockbuster, it's like it was a blockbuster. What more of a blockbuster could you be than breaking the record on Labor Day weekend for money made on a movie? Like that seems like a blockbuster to me. And it did have multiple sequels as well. So I would say one change to be a blockbuster, if they were to do this again, was to make sure it comes out on Labor Day.
My one is, and this is probably very different from what I like in a lot of movies like this, where I'm usually sort of like, give me more of the monster, give me all this like gore, I want to see how nasty this thing is. But on this one, I'm gonna swing the pendulum to the other side. I thought the creepiest parts of the movie were before you actually saw the demon and they didn't know what was going on. And it was really eerie. And they just saw something dumping a bloody sheet down the tube, or, you knew the demon was nearby when they were in the diner, but you didn't see it. And there was just this eeriness of it. And then once you saw the monster, I mean, obviously it was clearly sort of like a low budget, but it sort of like got a little bit goofier once the monster showed up. And I think my change, I would dial the monster back a little bit and stick with that just like eerie sense that the movie had in its first half. And I think I had doing some of the research, I'd seen that some of their financing fell through after they'd already started, and they had to totally rewrite the ending. So I don't know if some of that was just like, well, we have this like monster thing, let's just lean into that a little bit more. I don't know what the original script looked like. Possible there was a difference because of that.
Yeah, for sure. And the budget was pretty clear, I think, when you saw the creeper. Just like the truck almost, he was scary, of course, but like the truck he was driving was almost scarier than him because you didn't know who was driving it at that point.
Totally.
So we'll get to our last one here, spin-off ideas. You want to go first? Sure.
I have a couple. I think one would be, you could have a series involving Giselle, our favorite psychic, who was sort of, it's a little bit of a horror trope there where it's just, all right, this psychic comes up and it just like takes care of the exposition. It's like everything that we learned about the background of this was from Giselle, which I guess that also ties back into so they could have leaned into discovering more of the background and just not relied so much on Giselle. But I thought Giselle was a fun character. And I could have a series where it's every different episode is her just making a phone call to a payphone. And it's someone picking up and it's just psychic Giselle telling them something creepy. They don't have payphones now, but you remember probably when you were younger and you'd be walking down the street and suddenly a payphone starts ringing. Like, I'm sure that happened to you at least once or twice.
I always find it terrifying. I didn't understand who was calling a payphone.
So I think there could be some element of every show or episode or series it starts with this payphone ringing and it's Giselle on the other end with psychic information that's not totally clear what it is. And maybe some of it's a little bit wrong or misleading.
And she's not even sure if it can help you.
Right.
I would definitely watch that series. That's phenomenal. I would love that. My spinoff idea is every 23 years, he comes out for 23 days of eating. So I think we have a whole bunch of Jeepers Creepers movies available to us in 2024. So I wish they would just start now because he's gone away. The movie came out in 2001. 23 years has gone by. 2024 is the perfect time to just release the trilogy because I think the original, the first couple sequels are all set within that 23 days of the first one in 2001. So planning ahead, I would love to have like just a trilogy released of 3 more days in 2024 of the creeper coming back and new places and people that he terrorizes.
I think that would be awesome. I'd also love to see them go the other way, go back to 1978
There's so much possibility. We can just keep going back every 23 years.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see the Creeper's car, maybe when it was new.
Right. And I wonder why it runs so well. He probably got it in the 40s and only uses it, 23 days every 23 years. We want to do the best of.
Yeah, let's do it.
Best of this time being sibling insults. Having a sibling myself, the insult game is very, very important, as it was in this movie as well. I would like to just cut it to the core, being one of my favorites being, nah, uh-huh. And that just resorts to that for a few exchanges in the car. And that just boils down sibling rivalries to just that, just yes and no and uh-uh, uh-huh, and just who will give up first.
I think mine is on the other end of the spectrum. It was sort of like when they were bouncing back, it's like Mama's Boy, Dick Licker. I was like, all right, I've heard all these. And then he goes right into Daddy's whore.
That was my backup in case you went first. Yep, Daddy's whore.
I was just like, whoa, Daddy's whore. I didn't know that was a thing. But that seemed pretty strong, I thought.
Very strong. She wasn't fazed by it at all.
It seemed like that was not the first time this had been dropped on her.
I guess I have one more. She says to Darry, he'd have to be superhuman, otherwise the smell would have killed him. Like, to have that sort of levity in the moment after you just talked about when the creeper just sniffed his underwear and he liked it. That was a pretty good dig to have in a moment of terror.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of like the one. It's just like that's clearly like an element of what makes this movie so fun to watch. It's just you could tell everyone involved was having a good time.
As were we. That was really good.
Yeah, that was a fun flick. And I think we got another fun one coming up for everyone for our next episode. We're going to dive in to the classic Shocker.
Many of you maybe not have seen this, but I'm sure you have seen the box cover.
Yeah, I think one of the all-time greatest VHS covers ever. I think I probably walked by this movie 100 times in Blockbuster before actually deciding to rent it. But it's great. It's a lot of fun.
I can't wait to watch it and talk about it next time.
Yeah. Talk to you guys then.
All right, later.